Hello and welcome to Bytes of Health, where we hope to take a bite out of your parent worries each day with sound advice and guidance. Every morning, we'll answer a commonly asked pediatric question in 5 minutes or less. I'm Dr. Jess Steyer, a public health scientist, and today I'm joined by Dr. Dina DiMaggio. Hello, Dina.
Hello, Jess.
So this episode is sponsored by the Gerber Medical Hub. Starting solids is an exciting and intimidating time, and there's a lot of conflicting information out there. And everyone seems to have an opinion on what's best for your baby. So for this reason, we're excited to share that we've partnered with the Gerber Medical team on a 3-episode fact or fiction series to bring you evidence-based information, debunk myths, and share the latest guidelines. The Gerber Medical team is a group of dietitians, lactation counselors, and food scientists dedicated to advancing the health and well-being of infants, toddlers, and young children. Today, we're going to talk about starting solids. The clock is ticking, so let's get started. All right, Dina. So what is baby-led weaning, and how is it different from traditional spoon feeding?
That's a great question, Jess, and we're getting this more and more right now. So baby-led weaning is one method of introducing solid foods to babies around 6 months old. And with baby-led weaning, infants start solids with self-feeding instead of spoon feeding. Babies feed themselves pieces of food at family time meals, deciding what and how much to eat. So with baby-led weaning, a baby sits in a high chair at the table during family meals and is offered the same foods as everyone else, but with a texture modified to be soft enough for the developmental age. So food is, say, cut into strips that the baby can hold in their fist, and the texture should be easily matched between your fingers or the baby's gums to help prevent any choking hazards. Now, proponents of baby-led weaning say it allows infants to develop better autonomy and self-regulate eating, potentially reducing the risk of obesity by fostering a healthier relationship with food. It's thought that the method leads to babies regulating their eating and becoming more adventurous eaters. Now, spoon feeding is also a way of starting complementary foods when a parent spoon feeds a baby a pureed food. Now, I usually recommend the puree start off thin and soupy-like consistency and then gradually introduce more texture to the food based on the baby's developmental readiness to do so. Baby should also join the family table, seated in a high chair. Spoon feeding is associated with nutrient intake too, and dietary variety and oral development when a baby, closes their mouth around the spoon. So many parents, though, do a mix of both, and it's commonly called baby-led feeding. And research has shown that responsive feeding, which entails identifying and following your child's hunger and fullness cues, helps children regulate intake. And this approach can be and should be followed with all kinds of feeding methods. So basically, we always tell parents, always go by your baby's cues. That's the best advice.
I love that. So, okay, fact or fiction? One method of feeding a baby is better than another.
So definitely fiction. So there's never one single right way to feed your baby. Traditionally, we introduce complementary foods when a baby showed readiness around 4 to 6 months by spoon feeding. And we usually recommend starting with iron-fortified infant cereals, such as oatmeal, which you can now start with any food. So I usually recommend lower allergy foods first, like avocados and sweet potatoes and peas or bananas, followed by high allergy foods after 4 to 6 months when a few low allergy foods have been well tolerated. So for spoon feeding, I tell parents to start with a soupy puree consistency, giving your baby as much as they want without force feeding. And most babies love purees, but some prefer pieces of food, and many do a combination of baby-led weaning and spoon feeding with purees. This method of combining baby-led weaning and spoon feeding is called baby-led feeding. So starting with purees, most babies also eat age-appropriate table food when they develop a pincer grasp around 8 to 9 months. And for babies starting with baby-led weaning, they also learn to eat foods from spoons. So there's really no wrong way to do this. It's about finding what works best for you and your family.
All right, another fact or fiction question for you. Pediatricians believe there are no potential downsides or concerns with baby-led weaning.
So it's a little bit of a fiction. So some experts believe there may be potential concerns with baby-led weaning, such as the risk of choking or aspiration if the caregiver isn't introducing appropriate baby-led weaning foods. However, one side of looking at baby-led weaning and spoon feeding show that the risk of choking seems to be comparable in baby-led weaning and traditional spoon feeding methods, so it can also be an acceptable option if done properly. And to prevent choking with all feeding methods, make sure your baby is seated securely and carefully supervised while eating. Other potential concerns with baby-led weaning is for higher salt and sugar intake if babies are eating what the family is eating and not being able to feed themselves an adequate amount of calories if they don't have the necessary motor skills for self-feeding. However, it's actually been found that baby-led weaning is associated with lower exposures to these foods, and research shows that there's no difference in calorie and nutrient intake between the feeding methods over time. That said, exposure to family meals with multiple ingredients may make it difficult to identify or isolate an allergen if an allergic reaction occurs. So other experts, are concerned that not all babies will take in enough food to meet their nutritional requirements. For instance, there's a potential concern for insufficient zinc and iron intake since babies lose their maternal iron stores at around 4 to 6 months, and breast milk is lower in iron and zinc. And inadequate iron intake is really a public health concern for all infants because based on the latest research, infants are not being offered enough iron and zinc-rich foods regardless of the feeding method. Therefore, babies require iron and zinc-rich foods such as iron-fortified infant cereals and meats, and these foods can be offered with all feeding methods.
All right, fact or fiction, babies that are started on baby-led weaning are more adventurous eaters than babies fed by spoon.
So definitely fiction. So I'm personally not a fan at all of the all-or-nothing approach. In the past, we used to wait 3 to 5 days between foods when feeding baby purees that are high allergy, but now we can give a new food every day. I still am cautious, though, and wait about 3 days between high allergy foods, such as eggs and peanuts and tree nuts and fish and shellfish, so an allergy can be identified. If a baby's eating new foods and have a variety of foods with spoon feeding or self-feeding, they'll have no problems being an adventurous eater. And don't forget also, the role of us as caregivers as a model. Enjoying new food with your family helps children accept new foods. And I often find that even if you're eating the same food on your plate as your baby, the baby will always gravitate to whatever you're eating. So, always just be a good role model for them.
All right, Dina, finally, can you summarize what's the current professional stance on baby-led weaning versus spoon feeding?
Of course. So no matter which method is used when feeding your baby, the primary concern for us as pediatricians is choking. So parents need to be educated on the correct foods to give a baby and to always be present and carefully supervise baby when they're eating. Never give a baby food that can block the airways, such as hot dogs or whole grapes or popcorn or other foods that present choking risks, such as melted string cheese or hard-boiled carrots. And I've seen babies come in with respiratory distress from having food stuck in their airway, and I never ever want to see a baby go through that again. So the most important thing is just to give them the proper foods to eat. However, if you feel a baby-led approach meets your family's needs, it's recommended to develop a feeding plan with the help of your pediatrician or dietitian, and they can guide you in ensuring your baby receives adequate nutrition, especially iron, which is crucial at this stage of development. So, basically, ultimately, whether you choose to start solids with spoon feeding or baby-led weaning or a combination of both with baby-led feeding, the key is to introduce a variety of nutritious foods and always respond to your baby's cues for hunger and fullness.
All right. Well, I learned something. We hope you learned something, and we have lots more to share. You can get your Bite of Health every day, Monday through Friday. Special thanks to Dr. Dina DiMaggio for sharing her expertise with us today. If you like what you've heard here, let us know. Leave us a review on Apple and be sure to tell your friends. Remember, there's no single or best way to parent. Parenting is a journey, and we are all just doing our very best. We wish you happy, healthy, and stress-free parenting.